welcome to the Squarebase Show with your host, Rob and Val. In today's video, we're going to be asking ourselves about the future.
Oh, another future chat. I love future chats.
Future chats are excellent. They're very, very good. So if you
because in this world, the future is fun to think about.
Yeah, and also if you're watching this in the future, you can tell us if we're right in the comments below. You could be like, oh. As you may have seen from the thumbnail, and not to blow the lead a little bit, we're going to be discussing the fact that we've seen some big, momentous changes to specifically the development team for the old world, which might be pushing us into a new place, and we're going to be deep diving that. But before we talk about any of that, and there will be some timestamps, so obviously click those. Before we do talk about that, I'm going to catch up with Val, and I'm going to catch up with everyone else, because it's been great seeing everybody. Val, how have you been?
I have been really good. I've gotten over a lot of personal inertia, and also just life slowed down a little bit. Kids are back in school. We're back to more of a regular cadence. So yeah, I'm feeling good. Knocking things off the list. Getting Squarebase Open Toronto all set up and ready to go. We're starting to accumulate boxes and boxes of prize support. I think I should start teasing that on the social media, because actually everyone's going to get a nice little goodie bag of stuff, which is great.
I'm really pleased tease about that for sure.
So yeah, maybe I'll do that. And then also we've got some store sponsors and some company sponsors, which I want to shout out as well. So yeah, things are going really well there. Tickets are moving along too. We're up to 42 players, which is big for our little old world.
Come on, everyone in Toronto and around. Ottawa, what are you doing in Ottawa? Get to some old world. Okay.
Ottawa will be coming. We've got some players, organizers there joining us.
Oh.
And so yeah, there's definitely folks coming, but maybe they could squeeze a few more in their cars. Who knows? It could be, perhaps it's my, as a TO, you gotta make the rule set you want to use. Perhaps people don't like the way I've done the missions. I don't know. I doubt it's that.
I doubt that.
Most as a TO, as a TO, it's just the other TOs that maybe wouldn't come if they really didn't like the pack, because they're the only ones who would read it. And Andrew doesn't like the pack, and he's still coming. So yeah. So I don't think it's that. But and also, what the heck? This is still an amazing, huge event. AOS will be there. The Seasons of War tournament. I think their second one. They're joining us. We got Blood Bowl. The Warpstone Cup will be held there. So I think that's a fun group of people to come play games with over a weekend, October 18th and 19th.
Oh, that's exciting. That's very, very exciting. Like I say, get yourselves down there is what you should do. Absolutely. You also have been playing some old world recently. Am I right in thinking that? Yeah,
I've been sneaking in some games. My friend of the show, Caleb Edwards, has started up an old world league here in Toronto, mirroring something he did for 40K, which actually was an amazing community building tool for developing a scene of players who got to play regularly and get out to events. A league, for those who are unfamiliar with the idea, is essentially you have someone who coordinates, every week. You get, or in our case, every 2 weeks, you have an opponent that you play, and then you meet up either at a store, at someone's house, and you play a game. And I've gotten to meet two new opponents, two people who I'd never met before. Oh no, Andy, poor Andy. I had met him. He's been. I've handed him awards. In fact,
come on, Andy.
And he's like, you handed me the awards. I was like, I'm just an awful human. Please don't believe what you see on the internet. So yeah. Anyway, so I've gotten to play two new players that I hadn't personally played before. Yesterday I got to play Steve from Ireland, who's an archaeologist.
Oh.
Like all these cool things. What a great guy! What an amazing person to have met. He's in town working on a PhD.
Surely an archaeologist is playing some lizardmen. Surely,
right? Although he was actually playing high elves.
What?
Here's an interesting thing about this fella.
Yeah.
He had never played a tabletop game before, ever.
What, before the old world?
Before old world, and he was a Total War player, and sort of suggested that this might be something he'd like to dabble into his spouse, which is always the conversation. And he's got amazing, fully painted high elf army. He made use of speed paint, contrast paints. I think he said Vallejo, whatever their quick paint is, and it's like amazing. Like it's It looks great on the table, and it's like built. And anyway, we had a really fun game yesterday, and we did wind up on a draw, which is pretty nifty for the Lizards. Lizards are now 1-1, I think is how you would say that.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's who I was playing with. Yeah, not bad, not bad. Clawed myself to a draw against him because he did have a big scary dragon. And then after that, I did a little practice prep game using Team England's WTC Nuln list.
Oh.
Which is a lot of guns. And I'm pleased to report those guns were able to go first and really mess up my buddy Shane's Cathay. So that was great. I did enjoy that.
Oh my God. I mean, I can't believe you've blown the lead. An entire 25-minute video, like, known the answer to Cathay, question mark? A whole video there that you've just blown it. You've blown it, sir.
It's a torrent of shots. And of course, this version is designed for team play, right? So it is a deliberate skew, which I'm sure could be exposed by a number of other individual matchups. But in a team environment, you're hoping to be able to maybe get it against something that it's going to do very well against. And in that on this particular day, with a lot of Shane's help and coaching, I was able to prevail, and also hopefully provide him some valuable feedback on that matchup.
Good. All right. Well, that's fun. That's a lot of playing, which is very exciting. I was just doing something.
Games.
I was just doing something.
Yeah. What about you, man?
Well,
I like that you just segue.
I've just ran 2 old world events.
Yes.
I've just run 2 old world events, so I'm just a bit like, I need a breather. But I am in the process of, I have just hot glued, really exciting times, hot glued 24 hills. Have I done that right? 24 hills to their bases, which kind of sounds a bit weird. Like, well, I've hot glued the magnets in because the hills we have, there's a hill, you take the hill off, and then there's a flat area so that you don't have to do the wobbly thing. And then if you want to put it back, 5D terrain, you want to put it back. So I've just hot glued them all together, which was that was a torturous exercise because we have at the end our October event for the Foray, which is the 500-point mission format. I decided I'd put some tickets aside for Star Wars Shatterpoint, and unfortunately, like, they just weren't really shifting. So I was like, you know what? I'll just say to the one person attending so far, like, listen, we're gonna knock this one on the head. I'm gonna open up the other tickets. They sold out in minutes.
That's awesome.
Minutes, which I thought was super interesting. Whether or not people are just excited about trying a new format, let me know in the comments below if that's something you're interested in. And there is a link to both the PDF pack and also you can buy the physical cards from us to play the mission deck. Also, I'm sure we'll do some links at some point. But yeah, sold out in minutes. And it made me really excited, but also kind of like, I don't know, like, it just made me kind of question like what we're doing a little bit. I was like, why is this so popular? What's happening? I've just run 2 old world events. So I've had like over 2 events. I think we've had 28 people. So like, you know, back to back, that's a lot of people. And like I said, next year, I'm more likely to go for a higher points value, whether or not that's 2250, or as we like to call it, the Steam Tank tier.
2200, not 50. I can barely divide 2200 by 4.
Sorry, 2200 or 2400 or 2600.
Thank you.
Or whatever the thing might be. But like, what do I do? Because this is a popular format, and so I don't know what to do with it.
So leaning on some experience that I have, which is the insights provided by the Old World survey that we did last January, I guess. Shoot, that's coming around, guys. There's going to be survey round 2 soon.
Survey round 2. Don't get him too excited.
Woo! But one thing that was noted was that one of the biggest reasons people didn't like going to GTs was that they were 2 days. They take 2 days, right? So like, one benefit of Foray is that I think you run them as RTTs, right?
Yeah,
they're
4 rounds over a day.
Yeah, so that might just be that you're getting a segment of people that, you know, can't commit to a full weekend, but they, you know, happily give you a day, and yeah, and the format too is very reachable. It's a bar that you can achieve, right?
Yeah, I'm a little like we're gonna have to do an offline chat about it, and I'm gonna have to like plan out a little bit. I don't know if I do one every quarter. I don't know if I do one every 2 months. I don't know if I do one a month. I really love the idea that it might be bringing a whole bunch of new people into like the low points games, which they can move into higher points games. I'm not saying they ever have to move into the higher points games as well.
Sure.
Like if that's just a format that works for them, I know for a fact that one of the things we see in all of the other game systems coming out of Games Workshop at least is a big push to having these like smaller format game systems, which are not the same as Kill Team, because it's a completely different game system, same universe, different game system, smaller format games for the game systems that they like. Horus Heresy, smaller format game. So are they trying to do that because they think it's good for getting new people in, or actually is that something that really keys in with your kind of monkey brain and you're like, I can own 500 points of ogres, I can go buy 500 points of dwarfs? Like, is it more fun to have 500 points of everything? Or if I actually question to everyone who's watching this video, please let me know what you think. More fun to have 500 points of everything, or is it cool to have the big army, the big collection for the one army? What's your initial feeling?
From GW's perspective, I would bet that they're banking on 500 points of everything will eventually lead to 5,000 points of everything. That would be my baseline assumption. That most people, and this is the founding nugget and of Games Workshop, was when they realized people bought more minis that they could ever possibly use to play D&D with, and that having a mass battle game was like a great business opportunity, and boy was it. And so I think in a lot of ways they've always tried to have that starter army idea. They didn't do it for Old World and Horus Heresy because they're supposed to be for grognards.
Yeah.
But in general, like the main games always have a starter box or a launch box that has 2 small armies in it, usually of incredibly varying ability on the table, and it's very frustrating. And the idea there being that you get started, you get some games in, and then it gets you hooked, and you want to add to it. So I think maybe this is opening that kind of a concept up wider. And the idea is that, you do work your way up to the big game. Maybe you don't, but I think that's probably the concept. That's probably what they're hoping for anyway. Or, like you said, you then buy, instead of one army that's 2,000 points, you've got 4 armies that are 500 points.
And you already see them giving you the kind of like, they open the door to that gateway of crack, don't they? With the system we have now with mercenaries and allies, they're like, just take a little bit. You don't want a little bit?
Taste.
You don't want a little taste? Yeah. And even in some of the armies. So,
And actually, you can, if that actually sparked something for me, which is you can see over the years that they have tried to bring in allies a number of times as a thing in the main game. And I suspect, again, it's so that you're tempted by what you just said. I'll just dabble with a couple units here, and then boom, you wind up buying yourself a whole new big army rather than just a little taste. But the players hate that. So in general, and I'm going to get a hate for this, but in general, allies allied armies, because they're not always super fluffy. They can be super themed and narrative and all that stuff. But often it's just, I'll just bring the best stuff from this other army with the best stuff from this army, and presto, there you go. So in other scenarios where they really opened up, I think they used to call it soup in 40K when that was a big deal in 8th edition 40K. Players really found it kind of gross. Like, they didn't like that it was just chaos. It wasn't like a specific piece of chaos, like monofaction. So going smaller allows them to do that same idea. You have a small piece that hopefully leads to a bigger piece without maybe turning off the monofaction purists out there.
I also think like they don't necessarily have like the kits to, like an Empire, allied unit maybe that comes in that's been equipped with some Gromril armor or something very funny like that. Like, they give you which, shout out to the SDS and the SDS Supremacy. Obviously, they are very keen for you to do a lot of kit bashing. And I know I spoke to many people will know famed artist Mark Gibbons. I did an interview with him yesterday. Many of you may know him from some pretty famous artwork, like Chaos Dwarfs, as an example, Dwarfs, as Necromunda, and I was talking to him yesterday, and he said he converts every model he ever gets, and I thought that I was like, that's so fascinating. Like why? And he was like, I just want to make it mine. every time. And I thought that was quite interesting. And I think maybe that's kind of an older idea, but it's not necessarily a bad idea or even an unpopular idea. I think that's one of those things that I think Old World is challenging about mainline AOS 40k right now, where they're saying, hey, we're going to give you the opportunity to kitbash some stuff together. Are you excited about that? And I guess the real answer is, are we? You know, I think that's the kind of the question. One last thing. I was putting out I bought some new mats for Foray. So they're slightly smaller mats.
Nice.
And I was putting them out, and then my friend Chris downstairs was asking me, he was like, oh, why do they need to be different mat sizes? I was like, oh, well, they changed the mat sizes for AOS and 40k, so they were smaller, so they would fit on a dining table. And he was like, they don't fit on a dining table. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And then...
You ever put that together?
And then I think I did, or maybe I forgot, and this is just something
you probably did and then forgot again.
Yeah. But one of the things that kind of reminded me, so people who have just jumped into Old World, who haven't been keeping track of Games Workshop for a long time, obviously everything used to be on 6x4s. Old World's still on 6x4s. But maybe, I think it was 5 years ago, Games Workshop were just like, we're going down to 60x44, so like a slightly smaller table size.
Yeah.
You know, and they gave a bunch of reasons as to why. But actually, I'm now putting the timing together in my head.
Right.
And using the Squarebase's favorite catchline, the only power in the universe is really spite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that they made the table smaller so that when Old World came out, it was harder to make happen at LGSs? Like game stores. like, are we talking that level of petty?
I love the idea.
Yeah.
I love the idea. I don't think so though. And also, obviously, Old World does support 60x44 as a game table size. However, they do say quite helpfully that a normal game of Warhammer: The Old World is played on 4x6 table. So if you want to be normal, guys, you got to be playing on that 6x4. You don't want to not be normal. I love the phrasing on that. Actually, I think it comes down to when they were releasing games like Kill Team and Warcry. I don't know if I'm going to get my math right here, but they always would come with these. They won't do the mouse format. They came out with these folding, like, nice boards, kind of like a Blood Bowl pitch board. They do that too, and 4 of them, maybe 6 of them, make the 60x44.
Yeah.
And so I think that way
I think it's 2. Maybe it's 2. Maybe it's 4.
It's at least 4. You might need 6, but at any rate, that gets you to 60x44. And so I think the genesis comes from the Warcry and Kill Team boards was where that came from, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
And then you're right. And then hilariously, still not something that can fit on a kitchen table, because you still don't have kitchen tables that are
60x44,
3.5 feet wide.
Well, obviously you're doing
but
the Games Workshop CEO's mansion, I assume.
Yes.
But
I don't understand what these people's problem is. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, with all that said, we're going to dive into what we got to talk about today, which is super exciting. So, it starts in a kind of weird place, but I think we should start with the backstory, really. So, Old World, when it was released, in fact, actually, there's Old World and then there's the Old World rumor. Old World got launched, and it got launched, and we did all the coverage leading up to the launch. And during the coverage, it very much felt like it was like, "Are you going to show us some models, lads? Does anyone know what's getting?" We were very confused. Would it be fair to say that when the models were being shown off, we were like, "Is that it? Like, what's going on?" Is that how you felt?
I remember vividly seeing the first reveal of, I think it was the faction reveal, where I think we learned both about core armies and legacy armies. It may have been the same, may have been 2 different articles, regardless, but there was an old tree man in the background. And that was the first inkling that I had that, oh my God, they're not going to, like they're bringing out the old tree man. What does that mean for everything else that sort of shares a model from AOS and Old World? And it wasn't. I had it was mind blowing that they wouldn't share those models at the time. To me,
it was a weird time. And I don't know about anyone else. But it did definitely feel like they were a little shy on the amount of models that they had available at the time. And then the launch happened, and I think we could revisit that conversation in a moment. They launched the game, and then we heard literally weeks or maybe a couple of months after, we saw articles saying things like the scope of Old World has changed, is what we saw. So definitely a big up level in. So I'll bring you to the main bit of the news, and maybe we can go back to talk about how little was put out and the timeline. Sure. So what's happened is, I apologize, I've lit you up.
Okay.
I've lit you up.
Okay, thanks.
So what's happened is one of the designers or sculptors for Age of Sigmar has now been given a new job as the lead designer for Warhammer: The Old World.
And that's sculpting design.
Sculpting designer, yeah. And you can see two of their previous works. Both Vordry and also Ushran are titular characters. They're faction leaders. They are centerpiece models, which leads me to think maybe you and me should do some sort of conversation about the characters, do some sort of tier list in the future about the characters. Maybe
that'd be an idea.
That'd be a cool idea. But they're the centerpiece models in those game systems. So now, obviously, this could just be something as simple as a designer who is maybe in just a junior role or a normal role, getting the opportunity to move across to a different department, because the sculptors for AOS 40K, that kind of group, are different to the SDS sculptors, and maybe got the opportunity to just move over and get maybe a bit of a pay rise, maybe get a bit more creative control, one of those two things.
Probably more responsibility, same pay, but whatever.
Yes, for sure. But it's fair to say he was, I would say, at the show, being, one of the major game systems, and he was getting to sculpt the major pieces of the major game systems. So we're not talking about, a junior designer here. We're talking about someone fine in their craft and producing, I think we can all agree, phenomenal pieces of work, which it begs a lot of questions. What the f is going on, I think, is the first question. What's your kind of initial thoughts about this?
Well, its first thought is tremendously cool. So, as Old World fans, seeing again a pedigreed designer being, for we don't know why, but going over to the studio and the team that designs and creates things for Old World is it's a coup. It's a win.
It's a coup.
What we don't know, what we don't know is who's that person replacing. Maybe they were already responsible for a lot of the new sculpts, or part of doing sculpts already, and they're on as a side hustle. Who knows? It could be additional capacity. It could be just backfilling someone else who left. So we just don't know. But what we do know is that clearly there's a really talented individual who is responsible, I think, for some brilliant sculpts. Although in the comments, I'm sure we'll hear that they are too detailed, too many buttons,
too bloody detailed,
and harder to paint in some ways, unless you love slap chopping, in which case they're fantastic for that. But yeah, so I think if anything, it's again another one of those things that just bodes well. You want to see talented individuals, moving into Old World to hopefully support future ranges and design. And it's cool that we actually got how did we even find out about this?
Just their Instagram profile changed, because you're obviously allowed to put what your job title is. Yeah, for sure. And also congratulations, obviously. It feels pretty exciting to be really pumped about a universe, as I am and you are, about, the Old World. I'm pumped about the universe. Congratulations to the people who get to work on the project and anyone who gets any promotions, etc. Into it. I think what it really does beg the question, though, is when you see someone who has talents and skills like this, you're like, okay, they're quite big models. What are we going to start seeing in the Old World? And that is the question that we're going to hypothesize around today. We're going to discuss, because we should kind of go back. Now we can maybe go back to the beginning, because until obviously Cathay, really, there's been this conversation about actually were a bunch of minis designed for both AOS and Old World, and they got schismed apart. Do you want to take the lead on this a little bit and like kind of like let us know the backstory here?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is as far as we can tell from the outside. And again, I keep threatening to put on my CoffeeZilla hat and do a real investigative journalism on this, because I'm fascinated by it. But as those of the show may or may not know, that at some point, well, we do know back in the day, Forge World, which is what was branded, all the minis and stuff made by Forge World, was usually usable in 40k AOS or Warhammer Fantasy or whatever. They were they were able to be used in a lot of different systems. So Horus Heresy models often had rules in 40k, and then somewhere around 2017 or 18, Forge World becomes internally branded SDS, the Specialist Design Studio, and things sort of carry on as they were. And then I would say the first time we saw it being indicated was at the release of not Old World, but at the release of Warhammer 40,000 10th edition. They removed a lot of the extra rules that they had for Horus Heresy units and things in 40k, moved them to a Legends thing where they will go away. AOS also lost all of its Forge World Gribblies and monsters and things like that. They stopped selling these things in the web cart as well. So there was a sudden lurch between or a bifurcation of what SDS is working on, usually, so that their IPs are like Blood Bowl, Horus Heresy, and now Warhammer the Old World. And then you have Age of Sigmar and the current day 40k universe done by what we term the GW main studio. Those two things, they do have some crossover still, but for the vast majority of situations, they don't. And they never really they don't have official crossover.
And the damn maps got smaller. The damn mats got smaller.
And the mats got smaller and the conspiracies thickened, right?
Yeah.
So why they would do that, especially when we were talking about how do you get people to buy more minis, right? Like what are different ways that, wow.
It's okay, keep going.
How do you get people to buy more minis? Perhaps their thought there is, if you make the miniature ranges exclusive to each game, if you want to participate in more than one game, you got to buy more than one army, which I think was going to happen anyway.
But the schism is what we refer to this procedure as. But there are some other unsubstantiated rumors that I don't really want to overly go into in any detail. But you and me did discuss them offline of the rug pull, where very close to the launch of the Old World, we were expecting to see some elements. Obviously, people talk about Kicknick all the time. Potentially,
certainly I do.
Yeah, certainly you do. Maybe the new Chaos Dwarfs are designed to potentially go into the Old World as well. A lot of conversations around these things, right? Because how long does it roughly take as lead time to go from concept and sculpting to us seeing it? You got like.
I think as I don't know, the standard timeline I've always heard is somewhere around 3 years. From beginning to end, that can actually extend longer, and maybe some certain things they've rushed and come up with faster. But 3 years feels like their general design cycle. So when they're releasing a new edition, they're immediately or have already begun work on the next round of edition. So that also means, like in all of this, a lot of people talk about how Cathay was a pivot. That like they saw Old World was successful, so they brought out Cathay. Absolutely not. No. Cathay would have been in the cards from the beginning, and it would have been what was going on. And if anything, probably to them at the launch of Old World, by the feel of things, probably felt like a sunk cost, as in, whoops, we invested design into this game that's clearly going to fail, which is how they launched Old World, in my opinion. It felt like they assumed it was going to be not successful. And lo and behold, it was. And, Cathay was already in the pipeline as part of what I suspect was a much more grandiose vision for what Old World was originally. And then this schisming results in the large portion of legacy factions being a thing, because in the divorce, it seems like not just were models sort of held separately, but also it feels as though certain internal IPs and factions were divvied up. The Citadel would, for whatever reason, which has a model in the AOS range, it was not attributed to Old World. It was held onto by AOS and released recently as a made to order thing. So like there's just all these very strange internal basically splitting up of the baby, dividing up of these internal IPs for what I can only assume are strategic business reasons that I don't know why. Like the other one that we've guessed at is that between SDS and main studio, if you are making a game and selling a bunch of miniatures, I suspect part of it is about wanting to know or being able to feel fairly certain that those miniatures are being bought to play X game. And so if you see Old World units flying off the shelves, then you can say, oh, Old World's successful, we can invest more in that. And like in 40K, Horus Heresy models may have been flying off the shelves. Well, this main studio might have been like, well, they're just using it to play our game. Your game isn't making any money. So this is, I think, a way of getting the attribution of those sales to the right department, which is what I would call anti-consumer. It doesn't matter to me as a fan of these franchises who's getting credit for the sale. It doesn't matter to me it shouldn't matter to them what I do with these minis. If I'm painting them up and putting them on a shelf, if I'm using them for a game, whatever. So it does feel like at some level, petty bullshit. I don't know how you feel about it, Rob.
Yeah, absolutely petty bullshit. It's really silly, and I feel really sorry for the creatives who have to navigate what are terrible business decisions, probably by non-creatives, just causing them to not be able to explore elements or have to fit within constraints when they're trying to design stuff, which I think is again terrible business. It also makes you less money. It's all dumb. Anyway, but
to the credit of the creatives, the rules writers, and the team that was handed what I can only imagine was a real raw deal. So they had like a big scope, great, like we're bringing back Old World. You can see it in the legacy factions that these rules were written probably with the assumption that this game would be played with those models and fully supported. And you can see artifacts too in those rules of models that were never in fantasy, but were created for an AOS. You see that a lot in the Daemons legacy PDF. Things like the Sloppity Bile Piper are Herald upgrades. Like you can see that at one point it certainly was meant to have a much bigger range and all of the factions, and that was taken away. And I think the way that SDS has pivoted, because I would have just taken my ball and I would have been like, man, screw you guys, I quit. They didn't. They made lemonade with the lemons that they got. And we have the Arcane Journal system, which allows you to remix models, allows you to focus on certain elements of a particular faction, encourages kit bashing because they don't have the kits. They didn't have kits. So okay, we gotta give them permission to make their own kits if they're gonna play this game. So they really did. And then backwards looking, you can say, oh well, they're just supporting that old world feel, that style of hobbying, of creating your own things and all that kind of stuff. Whereas really, I think it was just a factor of they didn't have a choice. They needed to come up with content, and so they made something happen, which is cool as hell. And you can see also in Cathay, you don't get those kit bash units, guys.
Yeah,
you don't get those.
You don't get those buddies.
You don't get those options. Because they have the kits as they are, and they'll sell them to you that way.
Yeah, so if you've kept track with us up until this point, what we're saying is, I think broadly, is the past year and a half, year and a bit more, has been a bit of a last-minute scramble with having to pivot around some elements of what they expected to be able to put out. And as we said, the lead time, I think, once it takes a while to paint these, and it takes about a year to do the books. So you're looking at sculpting sometimes being like 3 years out. Sometimes more, sometimes 4 years out. So it could be a long time away. And like Val said, they could speed up. So that's a big ship to just like 2 years before launch, a year before launch, 6 more months before launch. We'll never get to find out until some insider breaks ranks and tells us one day, you know, this division occurred. And then we've seen this kind of scramble. And I think it's been a broadly pretty successful scramble, with like the cherry on the end of that scramble being this, I wouldn't say rushed. I don't want to ever say rushed, but this expedited Cathayan release to kind of say, you know, to kind of say like, hey, by the way, we're here. Hey, by the way, we're a part of the, we're going to launch stuff. And that brings us on to the expansion of the old world, and also the future of what this might look like. Because with that designer coming over from main studio and starting to like work and producing old world sculpts, we won't see their work for maybe up to 3 years time. So it's going to be a while. It's gonna be a while, but we
don't know when they made that shift either. Like they could have been already doing the job for a year. Who knows, right?
Just forgot to update their profile. Yeah, that happens. But the thing to discuss is what do we think is going to happen in the future? Because there's 2 real paths that we can go down now, and I'd love to know what everyone in the community feels. So let us know in the comments, and obviously I want to talk about it with Val. So 2 futures I think that we can really see are. Either we're going to have the Arcane Journal kind of drip feed additional releases. And I think it's really worth looking at what's going on with SDS in general at the moment and what their philosophy is. And also just whole new factions a la Cathay. Because when we do get these Arcane Journals, they're not really adding more than a couple of character sculpts, which you can do pretty fast. They put them out in resin often, so usually they're pretty fast to do in that front as well. It's much easier than tooling for plastic. That's a much longer lead time. So of those 2 kind of general futures, after we've had this scramble, and obviously during the scramble, they would have also tried to plan out ahead of time. We're now, like, you know, after the scramble of the launch, we're 2 years after that, or a year and a half after that. So what do you think initially we're going to see? Give me a year, maybe 2 years ahead of time.
So I think in the next year and a bit, because we're rapidly getting close to 1 year, 1 year out from what we would assume the next edition launch will be. We would assume the next edition drops in January of 2027. If they go by the cadence that most of their games go on, which is every 3 years. Old World was, I think, shuffled out the door in January. I'd be curious to see if they move that around. That's also an interesting concept of, you know, do they insert Old World as a 4th leg of all the games? So
which we covered in another video, right? Yeah.
So that could bump it into a summer launch in 2027, and then the other games get shifted or delayed. We'll see. So that's a big question. But at that launch, you know, that is something that will have been informed by the success of the initial release of Old World. So I would think that at that moment, you will probably see new factions in that box, in that release, or a redesign of existing factions. But between now and then, I don't know. I don't feel like we're going to see a ton of content. Maybe an Arcane Journal or 2 along the way.
Okay, so you think maybe a bit of a holding pattern with Arcane Journals, with maybe some character sculpts, and then you might start to see some like big faction releases. That's generally your theory.
Yes. Well, if we assume, so like as you were saying, like we don't, maybe this wasn't rushed. It sure felt rushed. Like the core rules feel rushed. It feels like certain things were, you know, they got to a deadline and they pushed it out the door, and weren't able to go back and adjust to the new reality of how many factions they had, and all kinds of stuff. And you see that artifact too in the book itself. You see Norska, you see Cathay, and you see Kislev written in as alongside the core factions in the sort of the in the book. And you certainly have seen models released in AOS that tick a lot of boxes for what may have been, you know, at the heart of a Norskin release. And we haven't heard a word about Kislev. So, you know, things certainly did get descoped or taken out. Therefore, once the success happened and the scope has increased, I think that's probably referring to the launch of the 2.0 of whatever the next edition is. That scope that wouldn't have been for now. That if the scope's increased, that's a spend that you're looking for way down the line at. Okay. And so whatever we're seeing, in the here and now is going to be stuff scrambled to be released, like the. Very interestingly, those two Tomb King characters, and you like the general and the BSB plastic kit for the Tomb Kings. It does make me wonder: did they hold back because they had so few things in the pipeline? They knew that they just didn't have much. Did they hold it back so that they could have things to drip out while we try to get to 2.0?
Yeah, well, we even had like the character. We had the Arcane Journals come out. Org does as an example. Org does and then we saw the model come out much later in the timeline. Just it wasn't ready, so it did feel like a scramble. I'd like to think, and I agree with you, I think what we're going to end up seeing over the next few months to a year at least is some sort of holding pattern with Arcane Journals, which I think they can do a lot of stuff with, and can be adding some named characters in. I definitely like what we've had with the setting and the kind of exploration of these like little characters and these little actions that have occurred in this ever-increasing ongoing storyline, which has been fun. So I have really enjoyed that. Like I enjoyed reading about Friedel invading, and then later on when Cathay goes past where Friedel has been invaded in their big boats and barges. Great. I've been enjoying them exploring that, absolutely. But post that second edition, or on that second edition, I guess there's two things: new factions like Cathay, and I think a lot of people are also asking, if you're doing new factions, are you revisiting factions? Is that what we're going to see? Or are you going to be reimagining factions? So I think we're going to try and touch on some of those now, and kind of give a yes or no, or will they kind of a conversation. And also, I'd like to just very clearly state right now, obviously I'd be incredibly keen to see all of the legacy factions made mainline, like official armies.
And that's a wild card I would accept. That's a wild card I would accept, especially as filler between now and then, because that is something they could spool up. And I don't want to blow the lead, because I know Rob is very well prepared for this episode. So like that would be one thing that I could foresee is the return of a couple specific factions, maybe. Between now and then, or maybe one of them between now and a new release.
So the first of will they, won't they, when will they, that we're going to discuss is obviously a one that everyone has discussed to death, but it's the biggest elephant in the room, or the polar bear in the room, in Kislev. Right. A lot of statements by a lot of people that saying because of certain global situations, people, they don't really want to touch Kislev as an army. Games Workshop hasn't necessarily shown that level of restraint. They do make an entire game about space fascists, so I don't think that
and not everyone's a massive fan of China or any of the other cultures that are used as inspiration for Warhammer factions. So I don't necessarily think of Kislev and think Russia. I do think of Kislev. So anyway,
exactly. But Kislev, and so we're going to throw back a year ago, cast our minds back, when an article came out from Games Workshop that said, in no way anytime soon will you be seeing Cathay, or will you be seeing Kislev as an army available to buy. And then a few months later, they're like, lol, jokes, actually we've prepared it. And knowing
for
that
the foreseeable future, there'll be we're not for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, for the foreseeable future, there'll be none. And also when they did the preview stuff, again, people might not have been watching the video for as long, or watching us for as long, but in the initial previews, they were discussing Cathay and Kislev together hand in hand. Those were some of the first images. And they did say that they've obviously created those elements for Total War. Those bits are done. So the homework's been done. So it feels to me insane to think that the second edition box isn't Kislev.
they're out there somewhere because they've pot committed to the idea of this being a march towards the Great War Against Chaos, which centers on Kislev and the Battle for Prague, which you just literally narratively handcuffed to the return of Kislev at some point in the future, right? It has to happen. So yeah, that is a truism, and perhaps the lead time is far enough out that you're right, that maybe that is a 2.0 reveal or a launch faction for the game. Although I don't know how many times in the history of this enterprise they have ever released a faction as a starter set or as like the key thing from a game. However, they do use those starter boxes as the opportunity to refresh, to provide a bunch of, easy to get core units or what have you. We've seen that with Empire and Arcs and Goblins and High Elves. Like a lot of great kits come out of former starter set things. So yeah, I don't know if I see it as a Kislev. I do see it as more of as a Kislev as the main lead when 2.0 tips off. I would be more, my gut would say it's more likely it would be refreshed. It would be a monoline that gets refreshed, or they keep to the same thing that they did before, and they use that to bring back some legacy factions that didn't make the cut.
Okay, all right. So just Kislev generally, in the comments below, and you, Val, yes or no? Will we be seeing it in the next 5 years?
Because we haven't also, in your cafe whispers and hushed talk, we were hearing drips of information, at least, or allusions to Cathay for a long time, well before release. But I don't think that's changed for Kislev. I don't think I've seen much credibility around Kislev anywhere. If anything, cold water are the rumors I've seen around Kislev to date.
Icy even. Okay. All right. So that's our first port. Let us know what you think, because again, just kind of looking, I reckon this guy would be great at bears and great at a bunch of stuff. But the next one I think is the most home run faction. If we're going to see factions, if they go down this route of seeing factions, I think what we'll see is Age of Sigmar owns Soulblight Gravelords, it owns Ossiarch Bone Reapers, it owns Nighthaunt. So it owns like
Flesh Eater Courts. Yeah,
Flesh Eater Courts. So it owns ghouls and vampires and a bunch of other stuff. But a beautiful tome. Is it in Monstrous Arcanum? I can't remember. But either way, some key elements that inspired a Total War faction. The Vampire Coast could easily be a way of bringing undead back, obviously outside of Tomb Kings, bring undead back to the old world, but re-envisioning it enough that they get to be different to the main line. I personally think this actually ends up being a really strong contender in the future. I think that feels very popular. And before we go any further, I'd just like to point out that if you're like, Rob, I really want my Tomb King Chariots to be updated, or I really want my 4th edition Dwarfs that they've released for some reason to be updated, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. I'd like to see everything also updated at the same time. But as Val quite rightly points out, as do many other people, it takes a lot of time to produce and put these things on the table. Something has to be at the top of the pile. What do you think about the boats?
So about Vampire Coast. Yeah. So 2 things. I just want to touch on what you just mentioned there, which I think we haven't gotten to, which is what have we seen elsewhere, right, Rob? So when AOS is the same spot when it was dropped as Old World is today. Basically, you know what I mean? They basically had all these old model lines, and they re-released them in a new world, in a new rule set, and then what happened?
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I was there 10 years ago when they slew Warhammer Fantasy, and then Age of Sigmar was a bit of a disaster upon launch. Very big scrout, it was an executive on high that was like, we should do this. They were scrambling. They didn't really have a plan. Obviously, this turned the apple cart up on their kind of 2-year, 3-year lead. They were just like, we were going to do Dwarves in a few years. Peachy, if you go watch Peachy Tip's video where he talks about the fact that the Dwarves had little steam tanks that were painted, they were sculpted, painted, they were ready to go, and then they never made it to the light of day. So there's a lot of things trapped in a cupboard or stored in a an office drawer somewhere. But I think, so what happened was you just saw this mad scramble because they didn't really know, and it's still true for AOS, they don't really know what it is. You know what I mean? They don't know what it is. And that's true, and that's its own both creativity inspiring, because there's loads of like, hey, we're gonna do this. You're like, whoa, that's crazy. That's cool. I didn't know you were gonna do that. And also it's a bit like, what's your plan? Year to year, edition to edition feels a little like, and we also saw that from SDS with Horus Heresy as well. Second edition, they were a bit like, we didn't really have a plan for this. Feels like third edition, someone was able to work out to work Google Calendar, and they started to do a bit of processing and a bit of planning. So looking at those externally, but over the course of Age of Sigmar's 10-year life, they did start to consolidate factions. They did start to like rebrand factions, was a big deal. The rebranding, I think, is what's probably most impactful here. Going from,
giving them their AOS identity.
Going from Wanderers, which was Wood Elves, to becoming Sylvaneth. Stuff like that. From Cities of Sigmar kind of emerging as this idea from what just used to be just dudes. So I think that gives some insight into what we might see. And my instincts are telling me that we're going to see rebrands. So that if you want undead in the old world, it will be different to undead in AOS. And that's why I think Vampire Coast, because I think it's pure money, is what I think it is.
No doubt. I made a screw face about Vampire Coast because to me, you can't have Vampire Coast without fucking vampires. And I was also alluding just to the sort of bog standard cycle of the way, like, for example, Fight 40K does stuff, which is, with the new edition, you get new codex releases, and with each codex release, you get a refresh, usually, of units. So you get usually like, and there'll be some that are, given more love than others in an edition cycle, but you might get, a core troop refresh and some new units, some things that nobody else has, right? Like that nobody out there would have. And that sort of a churn over time replaces the existing miniature range. In 40K, you've seen like Eldar is almost has been almost fully redone. Imperial Guard got fully redone, et cetera, et cetera. Like they just grind their way through over the course of edition refreshes. And I think that's gotta be the idea. Now that the core armies are out, that as things go on, as we get new books in the future, they will come with new kits to replace existing kits, and also net new kits, like the new ideas, like we saw with the Knights of the Realm on foot, for example. That was a thing that didn't exist in fantasy before. So that's that kind of cycle. And then in each edition, usually you get the big splash. You get a totally new faction. You get a second wave of a totally new faction. And that's how they keep it fresh. So you give a completely net new thing. Interestingly, in Old World, you have the opportunity to not only refresh existing ranges, bring in totally new things like Cathay, but they also on the bench have these legacy factions, which they could pull in as well. So that's pretty exciting. And for Vampire Coast, I just don't, a world where we see Vampire Coast without vampire counts is one that I'm a little bit sad about.
Yeah, I understand. I think having these conversations definitely going to make people be like, oh, well, obviously I just want my vampire counts back. I don't want Vampire Coast. And there's other people going to be like, yeah, obviously I want Vampire Coast. Are you mental? And there are throwbacks as well, because in Tamrakhan or in the Monster Khan, I can't remember which, you had the colossal Necrofex Colossus, or like the thing that was made from a ship.
Yes. Which wasn't explicitly a Vampire Coast thing there in Monstrous Arcanum, but going back to, I think it's a White Dwarf article, and there may have even been a Vampire Coast pamphlet. Like it might have had maybe I'm thinking of Kislev, but there was an army list for Vampire Coast in a previous edition of Warhammer Fantasy. They existed, and they were released as essentially a kitbash faction. I think they got a couple of minis for characters. And then they provided you with cool articles for how you would mix and match existing kits to make the rest of the range, which is pretty cool. And I hope it's not the way they do it this time. If they do it, I hope you get some really awesome bespoke kits for Vampire Coast. But Yeah, that is definitely something. It has existed at some level in Warhammer Fantasy before,
which I think is cool. The idea of like a black powder army. We might see a giant centerpiece model. We've seen a sculptor that can do giant centerpiece models. They obviously already have sculptors that can do that. You obviously got the Bone Dragon was brilliant. So you got lots of people who can do that already. So that'd be fun. And I mean, dude, that would be really exciting if that was to happen.
Yes, I will allow that, assuming that we see the return of Vampire Counts, which I believe I believe in my heart to be actually something that will happen. But
okay,
maybe I'm blowing the lead.
So reading the tea leaves, the next. So I think Vampire Coast is. I'm going to say this the crazy statement now. I'm going to say Vampire Coast is a definite within the next 5 years. That's my hot take. Okay,
I buy that. I buy that. No problem.
All
no
right.
problem.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Okay, so the next one. This is a bit of reading the tea leaves, but I think this also makes a lot of sense. So one of the things that's missing a lot in Age of Sigmar, rumored to be missing, but also is a legacy faction in the old world, is Dark Elves.
Okay.
Yeah, Dark Elves. Yeah. So Dark Elves are one of those factions where you're like, what's the plan? There's been rumors in Age of Sigmar for a long time, rumors, like little lore tidbits and little bits, but ultimately it's never been released. And with them being renegade / legacy in old world, it makes you say, okay, well, they're going to get an AOS release. That's how we work out that Chaos Dwarfs is coming out for AOS, because it was a legacy faction for the old world. It's pretty simple. But you know, projects get started, projects don't necessarily get finalized, and Dark Elves would not quite make a ton of sense because they are somewhere else right now, right? Like they're very disconnected to everything that we're currently seeing, very much centered in and around the Empire. Still, like there's a lot of like fighting around that particular region, a lot of invasions. So Dark Elves, I don't think would fit from the situation we're in, like narratively now, but Dark Elves would fit because there's just a bunch of kits that are locking around with nothing to do, and I find that to be very weird. So what do you reckon about Dark Elves?
So I think if we see a refresh in AOS of Daughters of Cain, because there are still the witches, the witch elves,
yeah, the Cainite
and the cauldron. So if we see that part of the range, because that's really the last part of the range that. And then obviously a lot of stuff are still completely used in Cities of Sigmar. So your rank and file are still models you can buy today. You can actually buy most of Dark Elves if you like them. You can buy most of them from Games Workshop right now at AOS prices. SDS undercuts main studio for the record. Price wise. So yeah, I think Dark Elves would be on my list of one of those armies that could just suddenly appear in Old World at literally any time. Especially with all the seafaringness, I know this keeps coming up, but because things got a little more global, the seafaringness of the focus on like how Cathay got to the Old World, the
boats,
the references to what the High Elves are up to. I can definitely see the Dark Elves having to come back on the scene at some point. And it just, again, because it is one of those IPs that seems to be in a state of neglect in AOS in the sense that it's not really being used
at all.
It's surprising to me. And also just from having spent a lot of time with the legacy factions, some of them feel like they were schismed later than others. And I would put the Dark Elves and how close they are, not necessarily in the finish. So like not the final pass was not done on them necessarily, although you could say the same for Wood Elves and High Elves. It feels like they were a faction longer in the process than some of the other legacies. So that is one to me that if like next week there was Arcane Journal Dark Elves or Elves of Nagaroth or whatever they want to call them, I would not be surprised. And I could definitely see them as a launch faction for 2.0 too.
I mean, an Arcane Journal for each of the legacy factions gives them a year of content next year and sales coming out the ass. So like, I think that's quite interesting. Interesting your points about Dark Elves, in that I think it mirrors the timeline especially. You were like, I know for a fact that you said one of the books that you thought was most undercooked, or especially the legacy ones, was Lizardmen. I think you said
Lizardmen and Skaven. Lizardmen and Skaven.
Which if we just do the timeline, if you want to know an AOS release timeline, we saw Lizardmen come out a big Lizardmen release came out just before 4th edition AOS. Then AOS got Skaven as well. So if you imagine they gave up on those armies at the points they got told they weren't allowed to have them, then you start to see a progression in this kind of like undevelopment effectively, which I think mirrors Chaos Dwarves as well, which I think we see High Elves really in both game systems. We see High Elves and we see Lumineth and Realm Lords, right? So I personally really can see Chaos Dwarves returning to the old world. That's my next one. I think Chaos Dwarves are very likely to return under the banner of Legion of Asgore, because Hellsmiths of Ashut, now they've had their time in the sun, are trying to be something slightly different, I think. And I think Chaos Dwarves, because they are an SDS faction effectively, I think they're going to be a little bit mad, and I think that they might try and bring their version of it back to some degree. And I would put them on the highly likely chart. We maybe should have done like a little, maybe like a little tier list or something, or like
tier list?
Yeah, a little tier list of what could return. But I'm gonna, if Kislev is like definitely coming out, Vampire Coat's definitely coming out in my opinion. I think Dark Elves and Chaos Dwarves fit in the same section, which is like I think quite likely.
Dark Elves or Chaos Dwarves?
Both. I think they're in the same tier.
Chaos Dwarves. So the Chaos Dwarf release, I was swearing up and down that it was going to be clearly coded for cross use, and I think what we saw there was some design choices that were made that were clearly not coded fantasy, right? And that they were not, they look like they're in a different world. A lot of them do anyway, not all of them. And so one of my feeling on this has emerged to that there would be sort of units that do crossover, and then there would be specific units for one system or the other. Feels like the way the system was set up. One of the problems with Chaos Dwarves specifically is that even though there is this fully new range for AOS, and so that in theory opens them up for use in old world. What exists though is not. They don't have a plastic range that existed before. They have a resin range from Forge World, and they have some really old pewter sculpts that we saw sort of re-envisioned for Blood Bowl, like that. The original style of the Chaos Dwarves was re-envisioned, and you can see that in the Blood Bowl team. You can see the original vision for Chaos Dwarves heavily influencing the way they look in Total War as well. So that sort of those aesthetics really did carry over. The thing is, though, that would have to probably be a lot of new stuff. And are they going to release a fully new range of Chaos Dwarves that is also like right up against the new range of plastics for the main studio? I don't see that happening. I feel like Chaos Dwarves were lost in the divorce. And that one thing that we haven't said out loud is at any time the strategy could change. At any time someone could say, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Why are we doing it this way? We should just be able to share. We should have them share the model ranges. I could see that happening. That could happen any cycle.
But at any point that happens, it still takes a while. Like we're saying, these are very.
Yes, it would take.
These are
That would be 6 years from now.
These are like multi-year long projects. So it's quite difficult to kind of like read the tea leaves on this.
Yes, it feels to me, full stop, that they lost Chaos Dwarves in divorce, and no, you will not see Chaos Dwarves as a fully fledged legacy faction come back. That feels like one of the least likely to me personally.
Oh, interesting. Okay, all right. So,
and despite it having, by the way, again, very advanced development in its rules. The rules that were written for Chaos Dwarves are quite good for the most part. It's the detail work that wasn't done.
Okay, so which of the legacy factions do you think that we're most likely to see promoted or brought back in? We've done Vampire Coast, Dark Elves. Which do you think we're most likely to see return or make a return into maybe a second edition, or maybe just drop via some sort of crazy arcane journal?
Well, we sort of talked about vampire counts, because to me, maybe I'm just clinging to.
You're clinging.
Something.
I think this is a cling.
But to me, vampire counts have been completely redesigned in AOS as 3 different factions. They are the vibes are entirely different. You don't have a ghoul army anymore in AOS. You have flesh eater courts, which are cool as hell and their own thing. They're not the same as they are in fantasy. And now you have almost virtually all of the model ranges have been redesigned for AOS. That includes now Tomb Guard and Black Knights. Basically, the only things you don't have having been redesigned are the Mortis engines and the Coven Throne. I think that's the last one. Maybe I don't know. Do they have crypt carts or?
Yeah, corpse carts they have. Yeah,
corpse. So maybe a handful of pieces are still in there. And by the way, a few models that are quietly cross-range do exist in places, like Dryads, for example. So yeah, I think vampire counts to me are up there with Dark Elves as the most likely to return. I think
the only return. Like, I think anything that returns has to be identifiably like not the thing. So I think Vampire Coast is the one. I think there's going to be like, we've got vampires, this is it, and maybe in the future they do vampire counts, but like I think that's what happened to Musalan. That was a big thing that you were on for a while. It's, by the way, it's one of the could
highlighted on the map.
Could also be that.
You know, so that felt like a way, and that seems to dovetail as well with Black Knights being able to be re-attributed back over. You can gives the Bretonnians a pretty natural foe to be fighting with down there.
That's true.
They don't really have any local enemies. They got to go down to the border princes and the Badlands to find people to beat up. So yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe you know something I don't know, but my gut says vampire counts were real close, and they're so different in AOS that if you just gave us like the vanilla vampire counts back in Old World, they are very different. Like Night Haunt are not, like Night Haunt are like they're not the like 4 ethereal units that you get in the undead army, right? Like they're like a fully fleshed out, totally different thing. So that's why I feel like vampire counts can come over.
I think that's fair. So there's obviously some big standout characters, Skaven and Lizardmen, and the likelihood of them getting promoted is the wrong word, I think, but being released into and put out. I think one of the things that I think maybe from a long-term perspective, I think if we're seeing any of these factions go from Legends and enter back into the old world, I think we're seeing them. Dark Elves is the one that's like, that maybe makes this not like, doesn't feel like it holds enough weight. But I feel like we see everything re-envisioned back into the old world. I think that's what we see. I think that's what happened in early AOS. They just kind of were like, holding pattern. Right, we've re-envisioned it into the place now. And I think like with Lizardmen, with Skaven, I think that could be real difficult to to re-envision, to like not make them Skaven like we see. Skaven and Seraphon, or Skaven and Lizardmen, are just like locked into AOS. They've got them. They've got every kit. There's a couple standout ones that aren't there, but like they're in. And I really don't see them doing anything other than re-envisioning them. And I think that might be the future. It's redesigning them somewhere else, like make them a micro faction to a degree,
This is awesome, and I guess this is what prognostication is all about. But I see things almost the exact reverse of what you're saying. It's once they're re-envisioned in AOS adequately, and they do have a truly different identity, then they're not competing as much if they get re-released in Old World. And I would say that both Skaven, so if we're looking at timelines here, if you look at Skaven and Seraphon, when they were probably making this call, those two armies were not basically untouched. Like they were prior to this edition, had Skaven gotten a new mini since the end times? Like a new unit?
Did they? Had they? No.
I don't think so. And Seraphon up until well, I guess you're right, was the end of 3.0, so like what, 2021 up until there. And even then they only refreshed the Source Warriors, Lord Croak, Like basically the vast majority of the range of Lizardmen were untouched, and they don't know when they're going to drop the second wave. So they looked like they would have been like majority crossover there. And even now, the big Gribblies have not been updated, right? So like Carnosaurs, the Stegodon, so many things are just like not.
Triceratops. That's just
Triceratops. It's just a Triceratops. Yeah. A very, very big Triceratops. But like, so those things have not been refreshed. And I think Skaven, like Doom Wheels, like all of their their artillery, like they've added units and they've redone clan rats and that kind of stuff. But they only just started to give it its AOS identity and ground it in AOS. Ogres are another one like this.
Well, ogres have been announced. Ogres have been announced to be getting a new model range soon, which again, I've used, people have been talking about ogres being squatted from Age of Sigmar, and I've used evidence of them being legends in Old World as no, they're going to get a model range. That's what's happening. So like you can kind of read the tea leaves between the two systems.
Yes.
Which is quite helpful, and I think really useful. And so yeah, they've announced that. So I think ogres could get their new range and get their models back into the Old World. That's what you're saying?
So but yes, because you wouldn't have to replace many models to completely refresh ogres for one thing. But the other thing is that ogres is just untouched. Like it's literally untouched. I don't even know if they've gotten characters in AOS. They are the fantasy armies still, like on the like they have not been touched. So like that would in this paradigm make them very hard to move over. What I think about ogres though, and maybe this changed, and I don't know why you believe that there's an ogre refresh coming. I don't know if there's
they've said that. They've effectively announced it. Yeah,
similar to like with the Cathay hints. Like you, as an AOS guy, you know that it's coming. Yeah. If that's the case, because in my head, the idea of them being kind of like a Beastman faction, where they actually get removed from AOS and attributed back over, because I don't know how popular the big guys are in AOS at all.
Pretty popular.
Pretty popular. So then maybe that's far fetched. But again, that because that didn't just there's no range for them if they're not going to cross. If they're not going to allow the crossing of the streams, the range was just not developed enough. And even vampire counts would beat a dead horse. When these decisions would have been made, it was mostly there, but like really important stuff, specifically like the Soul Blight units that we've seen, like the Knights and the Tomb Guard, and like a lot of important pieces. The Zombie Dragon, a lot of important pieces just hadn't yet been reimagined for AOS. So the factions that are there, though, in my opinion, Dark Elves are there, Vampire Counts are there, and then there's another one that's really interesting. I wonder if it's on your list.
Kislev. Oh no, give me the interesting one. I'd love one not to be on my list. Go for it.
So this is the one that I see as the dark horse for the faction that no one likes. None of the systems seem to be giving it any love anymore. In fact,
Daemons.
It's being quietly removed from everywhere.
Yeah.
Demons. I could see Demons being, and especially again with that march towards the Great War Against Chaos, that Demons is being essentially not necessarily written out, but structurally made redundant in a lot of the other areas, or they're being reimagined in the context of another faction. So like in 40K, you have the Chaos Space Marine chapters have demon auxiliaries, and it's all but confirmed at this point, or all but like finalized that they're not getting their own codex anymore, that they're just sort of absorbed into other factions. I think in AOS, they had already started this process ages ago, where like you had very Chaos God centric groups. I don't know how demons function in AOS. It feels like
demons are a big function. Demons are a big function with specifically like the main characters in AOS being the greater demon. So Scarbrand, Rotigus, Kairos, and Shalaxi definitely are the main characters in those settings. I would say like in the conversation of demons, and using my Horus Heresy knowledge to kind of bring something to it, because only last week Games Workshop released a Demons of of the Ruin Storm PDF for Horus Heresy. And Horus Heresy and like Old World are done by the same, not department, but group of departments. They're the same like network. SDS.
Yeah.
And so what they did is they broke the demons down into 8 factions. Using the 8-pointed Chaos Star. So 8 factions, and 4 of them were obviously the main 4 Chaos gods that we know. But they kind of gave them more like of a generic title. And so, you know, again, that's a PDF. So that is not like a book that they're releasing. So they clearly aren't being like, hey, go buy a bunch of demons. But it's like, if you have your demons, go play with them. Here's a way to play demons. And actually written into the main rules, if you're playing as traitors, are ways of summoning demons. So like, so while the PDF, so while it's a PDF for the demons, although there's also a PDF for Custodes, we're waiting for the Custodes book. My hot take on demons is that STS is going to do its own demon range, and that will be stuff that you see in Old World, and that's stuff that we'll see in Heresy. So that will be the demon range that comes out from them. You know, and you already have like some heresy-based demons like Kabanda and Samus. So like they're not shy in doing that. So I think you'll end up seeing a demon range coming out from STS, and you'll have a demon range for 40k AOS, and they are separate. I think they've broken up now. They just don't want to say it. That's my hot take.
That's interesting. Interesting. And the fact that SCS released this, is it framed as a legacy PDF, or is it framed as like a rule supplement for?
So it's framed as a legacy PDF, but they were very insistent in saying, unlike Old World, that any legacy PDFs are match play legal. They specifically want people to know, we are writing this so you can use this in events for the next however long the life cycle is. They haven't said that there's a time limit on it. They're like, if we do this, it's legal. My hot take is that's what we're going to see, and I think it makes a lot of sense because with the 40k thing, I think that's just bringing in demons in line with what's already happened in AOS. In AOS, if you want to collect Slanesh, you collect the demons and mortal side of it, and you kind of get the whole kit and caboodle. Then it kind of expands the range quite a lot, which is nice, and it really focuses the range, I think, as well. So I think that's what we're likely to see in the future.
It feels to me, and maybe I'm just trying to take everything that all the amazing insight you just gave me, and now I'm just trying to prove my point. That's very possible.
That vampire counts are coming back. Is that what you're
Vampire counts are coming back. But it feels to me like, again, in the internal IP battle, it feels to me STS maybe won demons in the divorce. And that's what's being redone.
No, wait. You can't take demons out of AOS. Like, they are so intrinsic.
No, but they can have their own version, and that's what feels like. So again, like as they get their AOS identity, they have their own version or their own model or whatever, and 40k will have their own version and model or whatever. But like what we think of as demons today, maybe that entity lives in SDS, and in which case it would be free game for the old world.
I think demons as they exist inside only AOS 40k. Like, I think they're just bringing them in line. They were pretty much released for AOS, with 40k being like a backhand. Like, especially, in fact, all of the demon range was released as an AOS first product, and then 40k can have them.
Maybe AOS owns it. I think
AOS 40k have it, and I think you get demons. But I think that's really exciting because actually that launch box, demons versus Kislev, demons versus Empire, like building up to like actual demons emerging. Because I don't think we've made many, if any, references to demons in the lore as is. So I think the kind of opening of demonology into the world is a second edition option.
Yeah, or like realistically, like depending on how fast they actually move, that's an entirely other different bit of speculation. Is how far forward do they lurch in their next iteration of this? Because we're not, in Warhammer time, it's like 30 seconds from now, because it's like 30 years before the Great War Against Chaos or something like that, right? So like it's very, very imminent. But in release time, who knows how far they milk the actual like incursion of chaos and like the storm of magic sort of rising in the world, and thus the ability for more demons to show up. So like, because they have narratively really couched that it's just like that the winds of magic are in an ebb right now, or so they're waiting right now. And so, that's why you don't have a lot of demonic activity. So maybe that is something that's much more far off, even narratively, which I would accept. I don't accept like the Dark Elves are having a lot of orgies and hanging out with themselves, and that's why they're not in the game. I don't accept that Skaven are too busy fighting each other. I don't accept that there's no vampire counts because, well, we killed them in the Vampire Wars. Those are dumb. I can see the demons being a later addition.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think you could absolutely be right. I think demons we get from SDS as their own thing. I think they're building a kingdom unto themselves, and I think that's what's really interesting, because we and also the old world community have been on this really weird kind of, if you're a customer, the customer facing of this journey has been like, I think pretty polished, I'm gonna say. It's only when you really start to look into the cracks, like people like us do, then you really start to go, what is going on there? Like, what is happening? Why didn't you have that model ready? Where is the new models for this? What is going on? I think that genuinely is the story there, which I think is pretty cool. I think
why are there two Night Goblin kits available to buy right now? Why are the Warriors of Chaos and
Slaves to Darkness models
Slaves to Darkness models exactly the same, and I buy one for the other? But you can also, by the way, Rob, and this is something we really need to do, still haven't done it, is talk about the fact that SDS undercuts the main studio with its pricing model.
They do.
And I don't know how they do. I don't know how they're allowed to do that. I don't know how they get to decide what they cost. But anyway,
we'll find out. I don't think we've missed any of the. I don't think we missed any of the legacy factions that are going to get upgraded in, right? But in the comments, let us know armies you think that are likely to emerge, armies you think that might, and then armies that you think are unlikely. I think that's kind of what I'd like to see. Maybe in our Discord, maybe on the community part of YouTube, we could also run a poll in the future, which I think could be quite fun. I think some fun stuff.
And I love your idea of so this is the where we maybe diverge in our prognostication is your view is they bring things back in old world through the microfaction model, which I think is totally legitimate idea. Or do we see a continuation of the Grand Army model with then microfactions that spawn out of those?
I'd also like to point out that this is a video. I know I should have said this much earlier, but this is a video that is super excited and hopeful, because it's basically confirmation that we are going to be getting a ton of stuff. I think that's basically what we're seeing. I think confirmation we're going to be getting a ton of stuff. The real question is how's that stuff going to get delivered and what that stuff is. We should have really said that at the start. We are going to be getting a lot of stuff, and obviously you can't get everything at the same time, and everyone wants their shot at getting it first. Obviously vampire counts first, of course.
Yes.
Everyone wants what they can get. I think that's interesting. Last thing before we go though,
go ahead.
There's obviously,
I've had so much fun. I'm down for another thing. What's up?
The very last thing is so now we've talked about, I think, the stuff that's kind of on the cards, the legacy factions that could come back. Then there's new factions. I know we talked about Kislev, but Kislev was announced effectively. So then you've got stuff like Dogs of War, Southern Realms, Nippon, Ind, Koresh. You have halflings. What
you
would they
have
call the moot?
Yeah.
The moot. Yeah, I personally, I'm a big believer in the moot making it into
vampire halflings.
Vampire halflings, the true future. So do you think, because I guess this is the next thing as well, one of the things that happened was when Cathay came out, people were like, yeah, cool, that's a great series of models, but I'd like my range to be updated, or I'd like new models from my range. Do you think that they're likely to revisit all of the ranges first before new stuff? Or do you think they're just going to randomly drop brand new factions? And do you think any of those could make it?
I think we're going to see random factions, at least one or two an addition. I think that's just the way they roll. That's the way it goes. And there's so much to choose from, like you just said. But I also think we see refreshes and new units for existing core factions, with the wild card of do any of the legacies come back, and if so, when and in what order. So they have so much to pull from. It's pretty wild. So yeah, I think for the most part though, you're going to see what we saw this time around. That's so interesting. That's so interesting. I think you definitely have to see new factions, and I don't know if you see things like Nippon, which is fun to say, or Ind, but you know they have made reference to things like the Hobgoblin Khanate, which again may have been a pre-schism idea that is now called Git mobs. You know you know, like there's, I think the places that are most ripe probably for development, and also interestingly where the game is centered really are stuff near the border princes. So I do feel like your Estalia and Talayan type models are that'd be huge fan service too, to really lean into Dogs of War at some point. But we're about to get that border princes list in the next Arcane Journal. I don't know if that's what we all thought Dogs of War was, or if there's maybe something else coming. Yeah, and I think like Araby, if done correctly, would be really amazing.
I think Araby or Ind would be really exceptional. But I think also got to remember, same department that make Blood Bowl, both gnomes and halflings, a key feature of Blood Bowl. Yeah. If you can just bang on about vampire counts for 15 minutes, I can bring up gnomes and halflings.
You're right. There's at least as many people excited about gnomes and halflings in Warhammer the Old World as vampire counts. You're absolutely correct.
In the comments, back me up, chat. That's what I want. That gnomes and halflings are on my listen, if second edition launch box is halflings versus demons, I lose my whole shit. Right.
If they want to just blow the doors off this piece, halflings v demons, let's go.
like people would just be like, what the fuck are they doing? Like, it would be amazing.
It's just free money, guys. Pick it up.
It's free money. Or yeah, halflings versus gnomes would also be excellent as well.
Halflings v gnomes. Bingo. Yeah.
That would be wild.
And like, I don't know, Blood Bowl's an interesting one. Who's the bad guys in the Blood Bowl box?
The refs.
This time. Yes, the refs always. But it's Bretonia versus Bretonia Tomb Kings?
Tomb Kings, maybe.
Who's the bad guy?
For the third edition of Blood Bowl.
Yeah.
Oh yes, Bretonia versus Khemri, yeah.
Okay, there you go. All right.
So they're maybe talking to each other. They're you know. So I'm just saying, you heard it here first. Gnomes. I'm going for it. I'm calling it. Halflings or gnomes. Okay. Next 5 years. Okay.
That's the real take. Now we've got the thumbnail design. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. All right. Well, let us know what you think. Obviously, this is just a bit of a trip down the future, but it is interesting because we will start to get, maybe after Christmas, we'll start to get some sort of idea on the shape of what the old world is going to be like, because we're at the end of the road, really. So now we're in the what's next for the releases, and I think that's actually super exciting.
The next big reveal beat will probably be the US Open final. That'll be the next big reveal moment.
Yes.
So that'll be early November. And then they may or may not make the cut for Old World for that one, but they, usually the following Wednesday, or some horribly timed moment, we'll do things like announce an entire edition of Blood Bowl.
Wednesday afternoon, the perfect time.
So Gnomes, Halflings, Arcane Journal Gnomes, Halflings may just be released midday on a random weekday after the November reveal. I think that's probably likely.
Yeah, okay. Well, let us know what you all think. This has been a really fun kind of exercise in talking it through, and also nice to hear that we don't agree. So I think there's going to be a lot of people in the comments who also don't agree, and this could go in an interesting way. So let us know what you think. Thank you to everyone on the Patreon for Square Based. You're the best. Great Discord community there. I'm sure they'll have some hot takes about this as well.
For sure.
And yeah, it's been great hanging out. Anything you want to shout out before we go?
So one last time, Square Based Open Toronto, October 18th and 19th. I know I'm a broken record on this. Cali Cup, hot on the heels after that, in out in beautiful California. Hopefully it's still there by the time it rolls around. And yeah, those are the two events I'm working towards. And also apparently building my Empire gun line again. It's back.
Well, don't forget, like we always say, get your models out, go play some games, go play some events, and go play some, go have some fun with your friends. But
one last thing on the Old World Charmed, I was brought in as a guest and we had a really great conversation around mental health, largely ADHD, but it was three of us talking about our experiences in that. I think a great lesson. A lot of great things were shared there from us. And I don't know if you're interested in that kind of a topic, go check it out. Warhammer and mental health, I guess. ADHD mostly.
Very ADHD way to announce it. Thanks very much. See you soon. Bye.